Identity theft is no longer a what if, it's a when. In this episode, Craig Taylor, CEO of Cyberhoot, pulls back the curtain on the identity protection industry and reveals why credit monitoring won't save you from financial disaster, but a simple credit freeze can. You'll learn why your personal data is already out there, how criminals use it, and the exact steps you can take to protect yourself, your family, and your business for free.
Welcome to Biz Help for You, the show that saves you the expensive learning curve by providing advice from industry experts in every facet of the entrepreneurial journey. Too many small businesses collapse. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 20% fail within their first year, and less than 35% make it to their 10th anniversary. The goal of this podcast is to change that statistic. So if you're interested in learning more to be a successful entrepreneur, tune in today.
So Craig, welcome to the show.
Candy, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I'm glad to have you here again. You know, we did talk a few months ago on the positive fish testing for your company and the employees to make sure they understand everything. Mm-hmm. And today we want to talk on kind of the other side of things and what happens if you have identity theft and kind of the implications of that too. So I'm excited that you're here. So I wanted to first really ask you about credit monitoring. A lot of people depend on credit monitoring. They think that's, going to protect them, but you're saying it's like relying on a fire department after your house is already burning. So can you talk to the business owners, especially explaining how they can protect their business credit and of course personal, and that depending on only credit monitoring isn't really the best way to do it?
Right. No, so there's a lot of different things that were just brought up for people to understand. And I think it helps us to level set with a little bit of some assumptions that maybe not the average person listening to this would recognize as being true. What, as a cybersecurity professional, and I know, Candy, you've been running your business for a long time, I know that my data is already out there on the internet. And what do I mean by that? The data is my address, my full name, my social security number, my salary information, my financial records of what's my credit score. All of that data has been collected by different credit agencies in the United States. And unfortunately, they've been breached. And so the data is out there already. It's not something that, like, there's an old saying, my father, God bless him, was born in 1937 and he grew up on a farm. And there's an old saying, the horse has already left the stable. You can't keep it in there. You can't save the horse because it's already out. It's already wandering around. We've got to go find it. The reality is all of our personal information has been released to the internet. Maybe our kids who don't have credit scores yet have a chance of protecting that data in some way, shape, or form. But our data, yours, mine, anyone listening to this, it's out there. And so it's only a matter of time before a hacker or someone that wants to take advantage of that information uses it to take out credit of some form. It could be a credit card, a loan, a bank account, a mortgage in our name, paying for it with our credentials and our good credit scores. So what happens? Well, for years now, we've all gotten that letter in the mail that says, your data, unfortunately, has been breached at our company. We'd like to offer you credit monitoring. Here's our way of saying sorry. And if something happens, bad happens with this data, you'll be told about it after it happens, right? And the reason they do that, this is the dirty secret of the financial industry, is the reason they offer monitoring is because they can't monetize it if it's frozen. In the United States, we have these laws, and this is not universally true. So if you have people listening in the UK, you might not be able to get a credit freeze there. In Canada, I know you can. Other countries like Spain, they actually have a better answer than freezing your credit. They have a national identity, which is a cryptographic hash of the user in Spain. And you can't steal that because it is tied to a variety of personal identifiers. So some countries have more protections. Most countries have no protections, right? If you're listening in Australia, in the EU, there isn't really this concept of a credit freeze. So the best you might be able to do in some of those countries is monitor for bad things happening. But for us in the United States and Canada, we can freeze our credit. And that's what the financial industry doesn't want you to know. They have a legal obligation to support it, but they don't want you to know that you can freeze your credit because they suddenly can't sell your data to anyone. There was a breach last fall called the NPD breach. That's the National Public Database breach. The company was called NPD, and it's just resurrected in the last 2 or 3 weeks. This is very timely because they sort of shut down operations when they were breached, and almost every American citizen and Canadians had all of their financial data exposed online. I went to a database that summarized the information that was exposed in their breach, and I found my redacted social security number 8 times at every address I've ever lived at. And this is the funny part, and my ex-wife's addresses that I never lived at, but I was tied to her. So somehow, so I was in 8 different spots. But I really didn't sweat it because my credit is frozen at not just the 3 main credit agencies. There's some misunderstanding here in the United States about, well, there's only 3 credit agencies to freeze my information at, right? No, that's not true. There are 4 major credit agencies, and then there are 3 or 4 minor credit agencies that feed data into. So I think it was the 3 main credit agencies, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. There's a 4th called Innovis. Those are the major ones, but NPD was a credit aggregator who sold the data to those big 4, and you could freeze your data there. We actually have a blog article I wrote about freezing your credit and identity theft with instructions. I could give you the URL if you want, Candy, but people can get help on that blog article by learning what the different places are and links to the URL at the credit agencies where you can go freeze your credit. So the blog is at cyberhoot.com/cybrary. That's our cybersecurity library, Cybrary, CYBRARY, and then identity-theft. And if you just Google cyberhoot.com and identity theft, you'll find the article. And at the end of that article, which explains freezing your credit, you have links to the multiple big credit agencies and bureaus. I think they're called credit bureaus. And then the secondary market where they actually you can freeze your credit. Sometimes you have to phone them. Others you have to write to them. It's painful for the smaller ones, but you have to do them all because the hackers know if it's frozen at the big 4, they can go ask for and get a credit score for you at the smaller ones. And that credit score, your number between 1 and 800, if it's close to 700, 750, that is a very valuable number associated with your name, your date of birth, your address, and they can turn that into a credit card sent to them. And they can buy things online, and suddenly you have credit in your name, and it's part of the identity theft puzzle.
Well, I only knew about the top 3. I didn't know there was a big top 4, plus all the other little ones too. So how do we find the information and how to reach them? Like I said, you have to call maybe or write a letter. Like, where do we even find all that information so we can freeze our credit?
Well, the good news is that, after I wrote this blog article, one of the smaller agencies got a plethora of people calling in, and they're like, we don't have the staff to support this. So they put up a web page that you could freeze your credit on their website. Hopefully more of them are doing that. So I'd encourage you to go to the article I cited, cyberhoot.com/cybrary/identity-theft, and you'll have instructions to go to all those different places to freeze your credit. But this is really kind of indicative of the world we live in today. There's a larger conversation, Candy, that we need to have around what is our personal rights, what is our personal data. If you're listening to this in a country that doesn't have the proper protections of a freeze, then what I would suggest you do is contact your legislation, contact your office, your political offices, and just ask the question, why can't we freeze our credit like other places in the world? Because as I understand it, Candy, Craig, tell me my data is already out there. So if it's already out there and I'm just a sitting duck waiting for someone to target me, I need more protection than what you're affording me in our home country. All of these things matter because the more further along we get, the more of our personal data is going to be out there. So there has to be some better protective measures that are in place. That's
So
the
how does
gist of it.
I was going to say, well, how does a business owner then, potentially still use their credit effectively and be able to get things that they might need, if their credit is frozen? So sometimes
Right.
someone wants to do a check and now, they can't because things are frozen. Like, how would you, educate them to still freeze it, but have it available as needed as a business owner?
So that's a great question, Candy. I was waiting for you to ask that because I love that question. And it's actually easier said than done. It's very easier. It's actually easier done than explained, I should say. I'll tell you a story. My wife and I just redid our kitchen in our house, and we went to Lowe's to buy the countertops and the cabinets. And Lowe's had this wonderful opportunity. This Lowe's, for anyone listening, is like the Home Depot or like the self home improvement store in the United States. It's like Canadian Tire in Canada and other places. But here's the story. If you got a Lowe's credit card, you got an immediate discount on your purchase. So I went to apply to check if my credit was frozen, like I said, like I thought it was. Because actually, once upon a time, I had frozen it and it unfroze itself somehow, like their website malfunctioned or they re-enabled it because I went and it was not frozen, even though I had asked them to freeze it. So there's another aspect to this where you have to check on it every once in a while to make sure it's still frozen. But I was rejected instantly. They said, we can't get a credit score for you. You can't get your credit card. And so my wife applied and she was able to get one. We haven't frozen her credit everywhere yet. So we've since done that. But the reality was it worked. It did exactly what it said. So here's another story. My daughter and I went to buy a car one time at a dealership. And I needed to co-sign on a loan for her. I knew my credit was frozen, but they are very proficient at these credit freezes at car dealerships because they sell cars and finance them every day. So they gave me instructions, which was relatively easy. They said, listen, this is the company we use, let's call it Ford Motor Company is going to ask for a credit check, and we use Experian. So I went to the Experian website. I logged in with my account because when you freeze your credit at the big four, you have to create an account and set up authentication, multi-factor, all those good things so that when you want to, you log in and you say, I want to unfreeze my credit for this company, Ford Motor Company, Ford Finance. Will put an inquiry. I'm going to unfreeze it for 2 days, today and tomorrow. And after that, it's going to automatically refreeze. And it's only going to be unfrozen for the one that I want to give my credit score to, Ford Finance. Done. Filled out the form, did it. They pulled the credit. They got the approval. My daughter got her car. I co-signed with her. We're awesome. We're off to the races. It was that simple. So as a business owner, you're just protecting what you have worked so hard to build, your credit score, your financial purchasing power. And if you want to protect it properly, you need to freeze it everywhere and just be prepared for that extra step at the beginning when you want to take out a credit card at a Lowe's or buy a car with your family. You need to unfreeze it for a period of time for the vendor that's going to be pulling your credit. Same thing at the mattress store one day. We wanted a mattress one time. We did the exact same thing. Unfroze the credit. They did it. We bought it under their mattress credit program. It was very easy. sounds like I have the habit of getting credit to buy things in my family, but sometimes there's advantages to that, right? Around return programs and trial programs, things of that nature. So it's relatively painless to unfreeze it at one of the major vendors, credit bureaus, and then refreeze it afterwards.
So what if you don't know who, which credit bureau they're going to go to, or the name of the vendor that's going to do it? Do you just have to generally like unfreeze it altogether and then say within 3 days I'm going to go back and freeze it? Or what would be that process? Because sometimes you're applying for something and it might say the name of a company, but they have a different corporate name, right?
Yes.
That's just a legal thing. You don't even know all those details.
Well, in the case of Lowe's, the person filling out the paperwork for their program had no idea who they were going to query. So I didn't bother worrying about it. I just let my wife do it, and she was approved right away. There is a challenge to that. You probably can assume it's going to be one of the big three: Experian, Equifax, TransUnion. I think sometimes if you press on the individual, they might have a finance department they could call to ask that question, because ultimately you want it to be easy for you, the business owner. And I would suggest if you can drill into it's going to be this credit agency and you give permission to, Lowe's Finance or whomever you're working with, you can typically get to that answer, but it might take an extra step with the person filling out the form at the Lowe's help desk or at their at the front of the store when you go in to sign up for that card. I would not suggest you just unfreeze your credit willy-nilly for 3 days for anyone that wants it. There are people monitoring credit scores. There are bad hackers in the world who are constantly trying to take advantage of these things, especially public figures like you, Candy, where you're a podcast host, me, the CEO of a company. We can't be too careful as business owners because we are likely to be targeted. My name is on our website. It's probably on most business owners' websites. So you do have to take extra steps, not only for you, but also for your family members. As I said, my wife has frozen her credit. Anyone else working on our website, we should have their things frozen, because at the end of the day, the internet has brought the entirety of the world to our living room, right? We have a website stood up. You can learn a little bit about Craig Taylor and his company, and that puts a target on us. And we're like, as public figures, we're more likely to be socially engineered with phishing emails, and also targeted for identity theft. So these measures are really important for business owners listening to this podcast today.
So are there some misconceptions then that entrepreneurs have about identity theft that I didn't ask you about yet, or that you didn't cover, that maybe you want to make sure they're aware of so that they don't believe, I know we talked about, 1, 2, about the whole protection, that you have with the credit monitoring. Are there other misconceptions maybe that entrepreneurs have that you want to discuss?
I think there's a few other tips and tricks that I could offer, Candy, for your listeners, right? There are services out there that will clean up your, let's say the internet is a big junk drawer and we put things into it over time in different websites and different places, and we often forget that we put that data there. And so there are companies out there, and I don't have any relationship with the company names I'm about to share with you, but for example, I paid for a membership to Delete Me. That's a company that is out there, and they troll the internet and all the junk drawers around the internet to identify bits of data that we left behind without recognizing it, right? An account here, maybe a financial record there, or for example, once upon a time, there was a financial website that could help you create balanced budgets. I forget what it was called, Chime or Monarch or one of these things. And I signed up for it on a whim. It was a free account. And then I forgot about it. And so I got a notice the other day from Delete Me saying, we found your data over on this website and we've removed it. Everybody in the United States and in the EU has wonderful data protection laws. You have the right to request, what data do you have about me? And as long as you can prove you are who you say you are, you can have that data deleted, you can have that data corrected, you could ask them not to sell your data to someone else. There's a variety of sort of a bill of rights under the GDPR, General Data Privacy legislation in the EU. In the United States, the best privacy legislation is typically in California under the California Consumer Protection Act, CCPA. But there are many states publishing their own data privacy rights now. So you could, as a business owner, sign up for Delete Me, or there's a variety of other, you could ask AI this question or Google it and find multiple services that you could sign up for to begin to pull back all this abandoned data that lives out on the internet for us. And it might be useful to an extent, but honestly, what we've seen, even in the NPD breach, what we saw is really just the tip of the iceberg. The common misconception is there isn't a lot of data out there about us. I've been very careful about my data, and I'm sure you have too for yours, and yet it's still out there. And what I'm suggesting is there's a lot more data about us both and business owners in the dark web, in the hacker forums of the world, which isn't above the waterline. Like, think of that iceberg analogy. What we know about and what we can check on, for example, if you go to the website Have I Been Pwned, PWNED, Troy Hunt is the proprietor of that website. He's got relationships with the FBI and a variety of other law enforcement organizations, and he pulled a database together of exposure information. My email address and whatever password was exposed when LinkedIn was breached in 2014, or any number. I think I have about 25 entries in his database for my personal email address. That's, again, the tip of the iceberg. There are hundreds of accounts that have been breached and exposed on websites that hackers have broken into, and they've been able to recover the password I used on that website. And so if I was not a cybersecurity professional, I would be like most people listening to this are not using a password manager. They're reusing this password over here and over here and over here and over here times 100. So I guess the best tip I could share with you, Candy, is that what we know to be out there is just a drop in the bucket. There's a lot more data about us out there. The best advice I can give you for financial fraud and identity theft is freeze your credit. But when you go to the next step, people have often asked me, Candy, what's the best advice you can give me? I say, adopt a password manager. Because if you use a password manager, they are smart enough to tell you, Candy, you've reused this password over there and over there and over there, and you should go change them. Candy, this password is too weak. It's too short. You need 15-character passwords. Or whoever's listening to this, you don't have multi-factor turned on your bank accounts or your email accounts or your critical accounts, whatever those may be. So the password manager is the single best advice I give anyone, because it allows you to begin to set unique, long and strong or random passwords everywhere you go. So should you make a mistake one day and click on a link to a LinkedIn recommendation that your old lost friend from high school wrote you out of the blue, and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe she or he wrote me this recommendation. Let me go read what they said. You click the link in the email, and suddenly your password manager is sitting there and it's not logging you into LinkedIn. It looks like LinkedIn. It smells like LinkedIn, but you look at the URL and it's not LinkedIn. Your password manager won't log you in or give up your credentials to a malicious website that is phishing you for your credentials, even though they might have tricked you into going into it. So I know we've morphed from identity theft protection, but one of the best ways to protect your identity from an authentication perspective is adopt a password manager. And there are some that are really good, and there are some that have had a checkered history. Do your homework. We've blogged about password managers and how to check. If you search cyberhoot.com for last straw, you'll find an article that talks about how to pick a good password manager, one that has gone through security reviews, penetration tests, application code reviews, architectural reviews, all of the different things that help a company secure their software product so that it has fewer bugs and fewer vulnerabilities versus companies that haven't done those things. I'm very fond, and again, I don't make any money off this, but I've done my homework and I've found 3 vendors that do really good jobs of third-party assessments, penetration tests, all of the criteria that I consider very important for a password manager. I would suggest 1Password, Bitwarden, Keeper. Those 3 products have done a nice job of third-party risk assessments and penetration tests. I haven't looked at them all. There's Dashlane, RoboForm, 1Pass, LastPass. There's probably 50 password managers out there now. So do your homework. Visit our article, learn about the different criteria you can use to evaluate a password manager. But listen, any password manager being used by an individual is better than no password manager, because the human mind cannot remember strong, long, random passwords for more than 1 or 2.
Exactly. Well, if someone does find out that their information was stolen and someone did open an account, whether it's a credit card or, like you said, someone could potentially have a mortgage, like, what do they do to say, wait a minute, that's not me, and, get that like off their name and credit?
That's a great point, Candy. Hopefully before that happens, you can purchase what's called identity theft insurance. Because all of our data is out there, it doesn't hurt to carry that, because when your identity has been stolen, you have to now go to court, to the laws of the land and the country that you live in, to prove you are who you say you are. It's such an ironic thing to have to go to court and say, yes, Your Honor, hand on the Bible, I am Craig Taylor. And I can prove it because here's my social security card that you issued to me. Here's my driver's license. Here's my passport. But it takes time and it takes evidence. And, so what happens when you've hired a lawyer or had the insurance company hires a lawyer who collects this data, and they go to court to sit and wait for their turn to come up and prove your identity. And they'll be able to win back the sole ownership of your own identity for you. But that can be a convoluted process, and it can take time, energy, funds, money when you have to pay for it yourself. And again, as a business owner, you're likely to be targeted in those ways, so it becomes even more problematic. So yes, you can take out insurance for those things. So do you want to talk about insurance for a moment? Because as a business owner, we need different forms of insurance. That would be something of value for your business listeners as well.
Yeah, you could briefly touch on like what types of things that they would need for their business.
So from my perspective, you need this identity theft insurance or protection. You can pay for a service. Sometimes it's bundled with the monitoring services. It's that they'll go to court and they'll win back your identity with law representation for that. So that's not a bad thing. I'm not suggesting that's a bad thing. But you need other forms of insurance as a business owner. You need errors and omissions. If you have a physical area, you've got to have general liability insurance. You probably, one of the ones that is often forgotten is cyber insurance, right? And check the coverage, because some cyber insurance has carve-outs for like identity theft or ransomware events or paying a ransom, because there are certain laws in the United States about aiding and abetting a foreign country on the do not support list, right? If it's North Korea, if it's Iran, you can't pay a ransom to hacker organizations that are known to be operating in those regions of the world. The problem is attribution is impossible. So you kind of can't prove that they are, and you can't prove that they aren't. So some insurance will pay for those things. That's important. You probably want, all the other car insurance, life insurance, homeowners insurance, all that stuff. But E&O, errors and omissions, general liability, cyber insurance, identity theft insurance. Those are 4 good ones that many business owners might not have thought about all of that.
Well, thanks for sharing all this information today. I know it can feel overwhelming, especially if someone has had their information stolen and now they're debating, what should I be doing? And like you said, credit freeze or add the monitoring. So I'm sure this was super helpful to explain the options. But we are coming to the end of the time we have together. So I wanted to ask, do you have an offer that you would like to extend to our listeners, and how can they contact you?
That is such a great option. Thank you for that. Yes, anyone that wants free cybersecurity training can visit cyberhoot.com/individuals. And we give it away for free to you as an individual business owner in the hopes that, hey, if you like this and you found the exercises and the videos and the Hoot Fish fishing simulations a positive experience, which we think you will, is we focus heavily on positive reinforcement of good behaviors to change behaviors, right? Most of the industry focuses on punishing bad behaviors, but they forget the good stuff. You have to teach the good behaviors that replace the bad behaviors. So, but go to individuals, cyberhoot.com/individuals. We give it away 100% free for life to individuals. The hope being, if you like it, you'll bring it to your employees and your client and your business, right? But for those that are already deciding, hey, I want to partner with Cyberhoot, we want to use you, we'll give you 20% off for 1 year if you use the name of the podcast, Biz Help for You, as your referral. Because anytime you sign up, we say, well, how did you hear about us? What's the referral? And you just put Biz Help for You in honor of Candy and your wonderful podcast that's helping so many businesses do a better job of securing themselves, of building their business. It's the smallest little thing that we can do for you.
Well, thank you for just mentioning the podcast too, and your support in encouraging, me as well to be a podcast host. And, my goal is really just to educate. So I'm so glad that you were here today to educate the small business owner on this topic, because it definitely can be confusing. So thank you for taking the time to do so.
My pleasure, Candy. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And to the listener, if you enjoyed today's topic and you want to hear additional information, you can find access to exclusive content in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in today. Would you please share this episode with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? And if you find our show informative, would you consider being a financial sponsor to help me continue my mission to educate business owners? A link is located in the episode description, and no amount is too small. I'd really appreciate your support. If you are interested in connecting with our guest and receiving the offer they had to share, a link to our resource page is in the show notes. Finally, if you have any bookkeeping or payroll needs, reach out to us at 310-534-5577 or contact@abandp.com. My team and I are eager to assist you. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.